Cop laughs at black woman in court, freezes when she pulls out her Secret Service badge. The courthouse buzzed with a subdued hum, heels tapping, muffled voices bouncing off the marble walls, and the occasional clang of a gavel behind thick courtroom doors. To most, it was just another routine morning. But for Jordan Monroe, it was another reminder of the double standards she lived with every day. Dressed in a fitted gray business suit, hair pulled back into a tight bun, Jordan walked calmly past the security checkpoint. Her calm demeanor masked a lifetime of learning how to shrink herself in spaces where she wasn't welcome. "Ma'am, I said step aside," barked the officer at the checkpoint. A young white cop with mirrored sunglasses pushed onto his forehead. His voice was sharper than necessary. Jordan paused, showing her badge for clearance. Not that badge, just the routine visitor's pass she was handed upon entering. The cop, Officer Greer, barely glanced at it before scoffing. "Looks fake," he muttered, waving another person through without checking their ID at all. Jordan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She had long ago learned that silence spoke louder than outrage in places like this. "Ma'am, you here for traffic court or trying to crash a hearing?" Greer said loud enough for others to hear. A few heads turned. Jordan exhaled through her nose. "I have business in courtroom 4B. He laughed. "I bet you do. Defendants usually do." Something twisted in her stomach, but she held her posture. "You're holding up the line," he added, waving to another officer. "Escort her to 4B. Let Judge Hanson deal with her." Jordan's shoes echoed down the hallway as the other officer, older, less arrogant, walked her toward the courtroom. She noticed how he didn't make eye contact. Inside courtroom 4B was packed. The air was heavy with anticipation. On the docket was a high-profile civil rights case, a black teenager wrongfully tased by police during a traffic stop, the kind of case that garnered headlines and career-ending scrutiny. The defense, the city, and its police department. Judge Hanson, a man known for his tough-on-chaos rulings, presided with cold precision. He glanced up as Jordan entered, barely acknowledging her before motioning to the gallery. "You're a little early for the circus," he murmured, almost to himself. Jordan took a seat in the back. She wasn't here as legal counsel. Not yet. Today, she was observing, watching, waiting. The plaintiff's lawyer, a young, determined black woman, stood, prepping her notes with sharp glances toward the defense bench. The opposing counsel, flanked by two police officers in uniform, whispered with confident smirks. One of them was Officer Greer. He noticed Jordan seated behind them and smirked. "Thought I told you to sit in traffic court," he whispered, just loud enough for his partner to chuckle. "Let her watch," his partner said. "She'll learn what happens when people pretend to be something they're not." Jordan said nothing. Her hands rested in her lap, calm and unmoved. The plaintiff was called to testify, a young man, barely 18, still bearing the bruises on his arms, spoke with quiet tremble in his voice. He described being pulled over for rolling a stop sign, only to be slammed to the pavement before he could speak. His mother cried silently in the front row. The defense tried to dismantle the narrative. They played edited body cam footage, claimed he was resisting. Judge Hanson leaned forward, scrutinizing the evidence, his expression unreadable. And then Greer was called to the stand. He swaggered up like a man walking into a bar, confident, careless. His testimony was crisp, rehearsed. The suspect was agitated. He reached under the seat. "We acted according to protocol." "You tased him while he was reaching for his registration," the plaintiff's attorney pressed. Greer smirked. "Ma'am, you weren't there." Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly. Her hand slid into her blazer pocket, just resting on something. "Not yet. Not now." The defense tried to move the court to dismiss parts of the case, citing lack of credible evidence. Judge Hanson nodded thoughtfully. Jordan's eyes tracked every movement. The lies were stacking. The courtroom tension was rising. That's when Greer made a mistake. As he left the stand and walked past Jordan, he leaned down just slightly and whispered, "You people always try to make noise. But this'll be over before lunch." She didn't move. Not an inch. But the woman seated beside her did. She leaned in and whispered, "You gonna let him talk to you like that?" Jordan finally turned. Timing is everything. Moments later, the courtroom was interrupted by an urgent message handed to the judge. Hanson squinted at it, frowning. Then his eyes flicked toward Jordan for the first time with genuine curiosity. "What's this?" he murmured. The court officer whispered something back. Hanson's eyes widened only for a moment, but the cold mask returned. All parties will break for 15 minutes. Everyone stood. Jordan didn't. As people filed out, Officer Greer leaned over one last time. Nice suit, by the way. Shame you dressed up for nothing. Jordan finally stood. She slowly reached into her blazer, her fingers sliding around the cool leather case tucked inside. With deliberate calm, she opened it. Inside, a matte black badge, sleek, unmistakable. United States Secret Service Special Agent. Officer Greer froze. His smirk vanished. His partner went pale. Judge Hanson dropped his pen. Jordan looked him in the eye, calm, clear, and unwavering. Actually, she said, her voice low but sharp, I've been waiting for this hearing for 3 months. And then she added, just loud enough for the judge to hear, you might want to take the rest of today off, officer. We're just getting started. A thick silence fell over the courtroom like a dropped curtain. Officer Greer's face remained frozen, his eyes locked on the Secret Service badge in Jordan Monroe's hand. His bravado had drained out like air from a slashed tire. His partner, Sergeant Holtz, swallowed audibly. They exchanged a glance, quick, fearful. Judge Hanson adjusted his glasses, the first sign of visible discomfort on his usually stony face. He cleared his throat. Special Agent Monroe, is there a reason you're here in this courtroom under observation? Jordan snapped the badge case shut and placed it back in her blazer. Yes, Your Honor. I'm on assignment. My presence here is related to an active federal inquiry. She didn't blink. The judge's gaze flicked to the clerk, then to the defense counsel, then back to Jordan. Federal? He asked, masking surprise with formality. She gave a polite nod. Ongoing investigation into systemic misconduct linked to federal grant misuse within local law enforcement units, this district included. Now that turned heads. Defense counsel nearly choked on his water. The plaintiff's lawyer, the young woman who'd been fighting tooth and nail, looked at Jordan with a mix of shock and something else, hope. Judge Hanson leaned back slowly in his chair. I see. He didn't. Not really. But he understood enough. Jordan knew what he was thinking. Federal involvement meant oversight, his oversight, and potentially exposure. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as she stepped out, the echo of her heels cutting through the noise like a scalpel. Outside in the hallway, Jordan tapped her earpiece. This is Agent Monroe. I've made visual contact with both officers. Judge Hanson was notified as expected. Reaction matches projected behavioral profile. Proceeding to step 2. A male voice crackled back through the earpiece. Copy that. Do not engage further in court. Surveillance team is in place. Continue collection protocol. She gave a subtle nod and walked away from the courtroom doors, unaware that Greer, now trembling with anxiety, had pulled out his phone and slipped into a nearby corridor. Greer's hand shook as he hit a contact labeled CG. Yo, he hissed into the phone. She's Secret Service. Monroe. She just flashed her badge in court. The voice on the other end was cold. Why was she even there? I don't know. Something about federal grant misuse. Hanson looked like he saw a ghost. I think. Stop talking, the voice interrupted, and listen. Get rid of anything. Paperwork, dashcam backups, everything related to April 14th. Now. Greer licked his lips nervously. What about the hearing? You're done there. Get to the station. I'll send someone. The call cut. For the first time since the traffic stop that started all this, Officer Greer realized just how deep the water was and how fast it was rising. Back in her hotel room that evening, Jordan plugged in a secure drive and began uploading encrypted files. Court audio recordings, Greer's facial reaction scans, timestamps from the courthouse entry logs. Her laptop buzzed, incoming message. Agent Diaz, intercepted deleted logs from precinct servers. Greer tried to scrub body cam backups 5 minutes ago. We recovered partial files. You're going to want to see this. Jordan's eyes narrowed. She clicked the attachment and watched. It was grainy and the audio was distorted, but the footage was unmistakable. The April 14th stop. The teen boy seated, both hands visible on the wheel. Greer screaming, "He's reaching!" And then a surge of static before the taser shot. She paused the footage. Rewound. Paused again, frame by frame. Greer's partner, Holtz, was standing on the opposite side. He had full view of the teen's hands. He saw everything, but never once tried to stop Greer, a silent accomplice. She uploaded the footage into her case file. The story wasn't just about Greer. It never was. It was about the system and those who let it fester. She reached for her phone, about to dial Agent Diaz back when a notification popped up. Unknown number. You're being watched. She froze. The phone vibrated again. Stop digging or you won't make it to court tomorrow. Her eyes scanned the room instinctively. Walls, windows, vents. She pulled the lamp cord from the socket and grabbed a portable RF scanner from her bag. A few sweeps of the room revealed nothing until she reached the AC vent. There, faint but active, was a signal ping. She climbed up, unscrewed the vent cover, and found it, a microsurveillance bug, blinking faint red. They were watching her. She crushed it beneath her heel. 2 hours later, she was in the basement garage of the courthouse, dim, isolated. Only a few security lights flickered. She moved fast, loading her bag into the back of her black SUV when she heard the sound, footsteps. Fast, then stopping suddenly. She spun. Who's there? Silence. She reached into her coat, hand gripping her service weapon. Then a voice, low, male, familiar. You're not supposed to be here alone, Agent Monroe. Greer stepped out of the shadows. His badge was gone. His demeanor changed. No arrogance now, just desperation. You don't know what you're getting into, he said. They'll burn you before they let the truth out. Jordan didn't flinch. Who's they? You think this is about me? He laughed, bitter, hollow. I'm a pawn. We all are. Hansen, the DA, even your people might be in on it. You're scared, she said quietly. Damn right I am. You should be too. She took a slow step forward. Turn yourself in. Now. Help me. You can't outrun this. Greer stared at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then, a loud pop echoed in the garage. Greer stiffened, then collapsed. A tranquilizer dart stuck in his neck. Jordan dove behind the SUV, drawing her weapon. More footsteps, shadows moving fast across the far wall. She tapped her earpiece. Monroe, I'm under fire. Unknown shooters. One asset down. Repeat. Asset down. Screeching tires, a black van tore around the corner and sped toward her. She fired twice. Glass shattered, but the van didn't stop. As it approached, a side door flew open and a masked figure leaned out, holding a stun baton. Jordan ducked, barely missing the strike. Before she could reposition, the van skidded sideways and two masked men jumped out, dragging Greer's unconscious body into the vehicle. She sprinted forward, yelling, Federal agent, stop! Too late. The van peeled out into the night. She stood alone in the dim garage, weapons still raised, adrenaline flooding her chest. Greer was gone, and someone powerful, wanted her silenced. As she looked around, she noticed something taped under her windshield. A note. The note trembled slightly in Jordan Monroe's gloved hand. Written on the note in thick black marker, next time, we don't miss. A threat, a warning, a declaration. She scanned the garage one last time before her yanking open the driver's side door and sliding behind the wheel. Her mind raced. Greer had been taken, tranquilized. The surveillance bug in her room, the ambush here, it all pointed to one thing. They were watching every move, and now they'd escalated to open aggression. Her earpiece crackled. Agent Monroe, this is Diaz. You off-grid? You didn't check in. She took a breath. Greer's been taken. 2 men, black van, unmarked plates. Neutralized him and dragged him out in the courthouse garage. They knew where I'd be. Jesus, Diaz muttered. We had eyes on the courthouse perimeter. Nothing flagged. Jordan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. They have people inside, possibly IT or security. I want a trace on the van and full background scans on Hansen's court clerks and staff, anyone with unusual financial activity or sealed personnel files. I'll pull what I can, but if they've got someone feeding intel, we'll have to move deeper underground, Diaz replied, and fast. Jordan hung up and drove. By midnight, she arrived at a safe house 2 counties away, a rundown ranch-style home shielded by overgrown pine and outdated satellite dishes. Inside, she bypassed the alarm, entered the kitchen, and opened a concealed panel in the pantry floor. Below was a cold, concrete basement. Inside, steel racks lined the walls, encrypted drives, backup evidence, burner phones, and files dating back a decade. This wasn't just her prep site. It was her insurance policy. She pulled a manila folder labeled Sparrow Protocol and placed it on the desk. Inside were fragments of something she hadn't dared act on before. A 2019 report of police brutality scrubbed before media release. A whistleblower complaint rejected by a state oversight committee, and most damning of all, an internal memo flagged for judicial review only, bearing the signatures of both Judge Hansen and a federal district attorney. It wasn't just Greer. It was coordinated, funded by a grant scheme designed to look like community policing outreach, but funneled into private accounts and hush money payments for misconduct claims. She clicked into her secure laptop and ran facial recognition on the masked men from the garage footage. Match found. Subject: Langston Price, former DEA, discharged, believed deceased. Jordan's blood ran cold. Price wasn't just any former agent. He'd once worked undercover in the Southern Corridor, running joint sting operations until one of his cases went sideways. Official reports claimed he died during a raid. Clearly, that was a lie. If Price was alive and working with the people trying to silence her, that meant something even bigger. Someone had resurrected old assets and buried their trail. She sat back, connecting the dots. Price, Hansen, Greer. All pieces on a board she hadn't seen the full shape of yet. The next morning, she met with Diaz at a secure location outside a decommissioned train station. He looked exhausted, bags under his eyes and a thumb drive in his hand. Got something, he said, sliding it across the table. She plugged it in and opened the file. Surveillance video from inside a lockdown storage facility in Charleston, one owned by a shell company linked to a former city councilman. Timestamp, last night, 3:17 a.m. There on the grainy screen was Greer, bound to a chair, gagged. Around him, 3 men, including Price. No sound, just gesturing. Price pulled out a tablet and shoved it in Greer's face. Greer hesitated, then shook his head violently. One of the men punched him. Then, blackout. The camera feed ended abruptly. Facility was cleaned out an hour later, Diaz said. Storage unit leased with a false name. We traced the payment to an offshore account connected to, get this, the city's Civil Asset Forfeiture Fund. They're using public funds to bankroll an illegal black site, Jordan whispered. And there's more, Diaz added. Guess who greenlit the fund's expansion last year? She didn't answer. She already knew. Judge Hansen. They were close. Too close. Jordan knew they had to act before another witness disappeared. They set up a temporary ops space in an old printing factory repurposed for federal overflow. Jordan laid the plan out clearly. They would intercept the next grant disbursement, trace the shell companies receiving it, and identify physical locations tied to the money trail. Simultaneously, they would leak a redacted version of the April 14th footage to an independent watchdog journalist. Finally, they'd plant a decoy asset in court, a fake whistleblower, to draw out the real players. But the next part of the plan required trust, and that's when it happened. Jordan checked her encrypted comms, a message from Diaz's clearance code. Abort op, they know, you've been compromised. She turned toward him slowly. Did you just send this? Diaz frowned. Send what? Her stomach dropped. If he hadn't sent the message, that meant someone spoofed his clearance. Which meant, they've cracked the channel, she whispered. Diaz's phone buzzed. He looked at it and blanched. He showed her the screen, a photo of his daughter walking to school. Caption, Daddy talks too much. They both froze. I need to disappear, Diaz said quickly. Now. They've already made me. Jordan stood, torn. You need backup, he said. But if I stay, I'm a liability. I'll finish it, she promised. Go. Don't contact me until I signal green. Diaz gave a stiff nod and disappeared into the stairwell. That night, Jordan drove to a warehouse outside Greenville. It matched the latest flagged location on the grant transfer list. She parked in the shadows, dressed in all black, body camera clipped to her chest. As she approached the side entrance, she picked the lock and slipped inside. Rows of crates, filing cabinets, old police records, dusty evidence boxes, things long believed to be destroyed. This was it, the heart of the operation. She moved deeper, flashlight scanning the space. Then, a sound. She turned fast, weapon raised. A figure stood at the end of the hallway. Not Price, not Greer, but Hansen, wearing civilian clothes and holding a pistol. You should have left this alone, Agent Monroe, he said, voice calm. Jordan aimed her weapon. You're under arrest. Hands up, he smirked. This isn't your arrest to make. From behind him, 2 more figures stepped out. One wore a federal marshal's badge. The other, Jordan's own supervisor, Director Howard Mason. Stand down, Agent, Mason said coldly. Her heart sank. Sir? She asked, voice cracking slightly. You were never meant to go this deep, Mason said. Now we have a problem. Jordan's mind reeled. Her own agency was in on it. They'd used her. Set her up to find the bodies, then bury her alongside them. She backed up slowly, but her heel caught on a crate. She stumbled. Gunfire erupted. Bang! The warehouse erupted in chaos. Sparks rained down from the impact of bullets ripping through old steel crates. Jordan dove sideways, her shoulder slamming into concrete as rounds ricocheted overhead, the air filled with dust, gunpowder, and betrayal. She rolled behind a rusted filing cabinet, adrenaline thundering in her chest. Her arm throbbed, grazed by a bullet, but pain was second to fear. Not fear for her life, but fear of what she now knew. Director Howard Mason, her boss, her mentor, was part of the conspiracy. Jordan, don't make this harder than it has to be. Mason's voice echoed, calculated and eerily calm. You're in way over your head. She didn't respond. She was already calculating her next move. Through the grime and shadows of the warehouse, she spotted a side stairwell. Half collapsed, but still passable. It led to the basement archives, her best chance to regroup. She launched a flashbang from her belt and closed her eyes. Boom! A blinding flash lit up the warehouse like lightning, followed by yells of disorientation. She sprinted, down the stairwell, into the dark. The basement was ice cold and cramped, filled with water-damaged documents, broken server racks, and the sharp stench of mildew. Jordan ducked behind a storage container and tore open a crate. Inside, old court transcripts, tapes, even floppy disks, physical evidence from long-dead cases. Her flashlight scanned across labels. State v. Alton Reeves, sealed. Citadel Program, unclassified fragments. Hansen-Mason Joint Oversight Mo 2016. Her hand froze on that last one. She pulled it free. Inside the envelope were three damning items: a scanned signature page linking Judge Hansen, Director Mason, and 5 unnamed federal contractors to an off-book public order operations program designed for selective legal interference and containment of undesirables. A ledger documenting untraceable payments to enforcement units, including a reference to Langston Price as a ghost operative, a man officially declared dead in 2021. A grainy photo from a surveillance camera in D.C., showing Mason in a clandestine meeting with a known cartel intermediary. This was treason. This was massive. Jordan pulled a burner phone from her vest and snapped pictures, uploading them to a cloud server tied to an encrypted drop. She set it to release publicly in 24 hours unless she manually aborted. But just as she hit upload, the stairwell creaked behind her. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Then Price. Face covered in shadows but unmistakable. You move fast, he growled, pistol at his side. Mason thought you might crawl into the archive. Guess he knows you better than I do. Jordan stood slowly, gun aimed. I'm not going back up there, she said. You're not going anywhere, he countered. Then, a second voice. You're both wrong. From the darkness to the left emerged a third figure. Greer alive. Bloodied. But standing. Move, Price, Greer rasped. You don't want to find out what I've wired to blow under this floor. Jordan blinked as that. You. Set charges. He smirked. Let's just say I had a feeling our friends upstairs would try to burn the house down. Price glanced between them. His finger twitched on the trigger. You won't pull that, Langston, Greer said. Because I know you. You weren't always on their side. Jordan seized the hesitation and fired. Bang! The bullet hit Price in the arm, spinning him sideways. His weapon clattered. Greer tackled him as Jordan darted forward, helping subdue the man once presumed dead. They zip-tied his hands and gagged him, stashing him in a corner. We have minutes, Greer said. They'll be sending more. We have enough evidence to burn it all down, Jordan replied, but we need an exit. Greer pulled a key from his boot. Follow me. They exited through a storm-drained tunnel beneath the warehouse, crawling through foul-smelling darkness until they reached an access ladder. Greer opened a locked grate and emerged behind a derelict shipping port. Jordan gasped the cold air like it was oxygen from heaven. A black SUV pulled up moments later. At the wheel, Diaz. I saw the cloud trigger, he said. You okay? Barely, Jordan muttered. They're all in on it. Mason, Hansen. Price is alive. Diaz tossed her a USB drive. Here's what you need to finish it. Internal audit files, bank logs, sealed court orders. But there's a problem. He hesitated. They know about your mother. Jordan's heart dropped. What do you mean? She asked. They know she was moved to protective care in Asheville under your clearance. They're using her as leverage. Jordan turned pale. I haven't spoken to her in a year. She's out of this. Not anymore, Diaz said. They're playing dirty. Greer stepped forward. Then we take the war to them. The trio relocated to a military-grade command pod hidden beneath a disused airfield, one of Jordan's last safe locations. Inside, The air buzzed with encrypted tech and war room tension. They prepped the data, splicing together a devastating expose. Footage of Hansen's backroom dealings, Mason's off-the-books payments, Price's resurrection, and Black Ops movements. The secret prison locations tied to undesirable processing. All of it real. All of it damning. They set the drop to go public in 12 hours via anonymous dead man's switch. Jordan turned to Greer and Diaz. We go into the courthouse tomorrow. One final hearing. One final move. Greer nodded. Endgame. But just as they prepared to power down, a warning light blinked on the console. Remote access attempt. Unauthorized intrusion detected. Diaz cursed. They've breached our firewall. Another window popped up. Live feed. It was her mother. Tied to a chair in a hospital room. A masked figure stood beside her holding a phone. He placed it to her ear. Jordan's voice crackled through the speakers, shocked and trembling. Mom? But it wasn't her mother who replied. It was Mason. Nice try, Agent Monroe, he said calmly. But if you walk into that courtroom tomorrow, she dies before you reach the second row. Jordan stared at the screen, face pale, the feed cut to black. She stood frozen, hands clenched. I can't, she whispered. I can't risk her. Diaz and Greer looked at each other. Then Greer pulled a file from a locked cabinet. There's one last option, he said quietly. We've always had it. We just hoped we'd never need it. He opened it. Jordan looked inside, and her eyes widened. Inside was a classified operations file labeled Project Gemini, Twin Directive, Federal Doppelganger Initiative. Her hands trembled. You want me to send in a decoy? Greer nodded. One that looks exactly like you. 8 a.m., Washington, D.C. District Courthouse. Rain slicked the marble steps outside the courthouse as Jordan Monroe stared at the looming pillars, her hood drawn low. Inside, the building buzzed with anticipation. Reporters lined the entrance, whispers flying about a last-minute federal deposition set to shake the justice system. Jordan adjusted her earpiece. You copy? Came Greer's voice, low and tense. Loud and clear, she replied, eyes scanning the skyline. Inside the van 3 blocks away, Greer, Diaz, and a special ops technician named Lucia monitored half a dozen surveillance feeds. On screen, 2 Jordans, one walking calmly up the courthouse steps, the other, the real one, sitting inside the van. Decoy is in position, Lucia said, nodding. If Mason makes a move, we'll know. Jordan leaned forward, watching as her double, Ava, the product of Project Gemini, made her way through security. The resemblance was uncanny, voice-matched, gate-synced, the perfect stand-in. But this had to be airtight. One misstep, and her mother's life was forfeit. Ava walked into the courtroom wearing Jordan's black pantsuit and steel-willed glare. She carried a locked briefcase filled with decoy files, just enough to bait Mason into a public mistake. Judge Hansen, robed and expressionless, sat at the bench. In the gallery, Director Mason sat 2 rows behind the bar, flanked by aides. His eyes narrowed. Ava took her seat at the front, placing the briefcase on the desk. The courtroom quieted. The bailiff called out, All rise for the matter of Monroe v. State Enforcement Division. Hansen looked down. Agent Monroe, he said, steely. You're alleging widespread corruption at the highest levels of federal and judicial oversight? Yes, Your Honor, Ava answered firmly, and I have evidence. At that moment, Jordan's team triggered Phase 2 black SUVs skidded to a halt behind a private care center tucked into the Carolina Hills. Diaz and a 6-man rescue team stormed through the emergency wing, silenced, pistols drawn. 3rd floor, room 312. They breached. Inside, Jordan's mother sat, eyes wide and afraid. Standing next to her, Price, injured arm in a sling, gun to her head. Diaz stepped forward. Put it down. Price sneered. She dies. Everything burns. No, came a voice from behind him. It was Jordan, the real one. He turned, too slow. She fired once. Clean shot, non-lethal, but enough to drop him. Her mother sobbed as Jordan rushed forward and embraced her. It's over, Mom. I've got you. In the courtroom, Mason's phone buzzed. He answered discreetly. She's in Asheville. His expression darkened. He stood. I request a recess, he said suddenly, stepping toward the exit. Too late. The doors slammed shut. All eyes turned as federal marshals and media representatives streamed into the room, pre-invited by Jordan's team. Director Howard Mason, Ava announced loudly, you are under investigation for conspiracy, judicial interference, extrajudicial detainment, and subversion of due process. Mason laughed hollowly. You have nothing. This is a circus. Ava pressed a button on her briefcase. A holographic projector activated, displaying the files Jordan had retrieved. Audio of Mason discussing containment operations, financial trails leading to off-the-books black sites, emails showing Hansen and Mason manipulating verdicts. The courtroom gasped. Cameras flashed. Judge Hansen stood up, voice trembling. This, this evidence is inadmissible. This is. Sit down, barked a marshal. Another entered with a printed federal warrant. Mason tried to bolt. Two marshals tackled him to the ground. Outside, the world watched it all unfold. Lev. The real Jordan walked up the courthouse steps, flanked by Diaz and Greer. Reporters swarmed. Agent Monroe? Are the rumors true? Did you take down the director? Was that a federal body double inside? Jordan stopped, pulling her Secret Service badge from her jacket. She held it high. I stood in this courthouse 2 weeks ago and was laughed at by the same man who's now in federal custody. I was told I didn't belong, that my word didn't carry weight, that my truth wouldn't matter. She paused. But truth has a way of cutting through lies, especially when you're not afraid to fight for it. The crowd roared with applause. Diaz leaned close. You sure you want to go public with this? She looked at the cameras. Yes, she said. The world deserves to know what justice really looks like. 2 weeks later, national broadcast of wreck. The media named it the Clean Slate Operation. Overnight, over a dozen arrests were made, including Judge Hansen, Mason, and 3 federal contractors tied to the Citadel program. Congress demanded hearings. The president ordered a full-scale audit of covert judicial programs. Jordan Monroe became a household name, but she didn't bask in it. Instead, she stood in front of a grave, Greer's. He didn't make it, assassinated days after the trial by an unknown agent, his file still classified. She placed a coin on his headstone. You gave me a second chance, she whispered. I'll spend the rest of my life making it count. Behind her, Diaz stepped up. New intel just dropped, something about a Citadel offshoot in Nevada. She turned, eyes focused. Let's go. Sometimes justice doesn't walk into the courtroom. Sometimes it breaks the doors down. Agent Jordan Monroe. Lessons learned. Jordan Monroe's story wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was a powerful reminder that never judge a book by its cover. Jordan was underestimated because of her appearance, but she carried the strength, intelligence, and authority to challenge an entire system. Corruption thrives in silence. When we speak out, when we fight back, even against impossible odds, truth finds its way through. Justice is not automatic, it's earned. Real justice takes courage, risk, and sacrifice. People like Jordan remind us that standing up is never easy, but always necessary. Loyalty and strategy can defeat power and fear. Teamwork, preparation, and trust turn a helpless situation into a revolution. One voice can spark a movement. What started in one courtroom rippled across the country. Your voice, like Jordan's, has power. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, inspired, or gave you hope, like this video to help it reach more people who need to hear this. Comment below, what did you learn from Jordan's journey? Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that justice can still prevail. And don't forget to subscribe to Untold Touching Stories, where truth meets courage, and every story leaves a mark. New cinematic stories daily, and they only get deeper from here.